Please pray with me. Loving God, we gather in this space to start another year with each other. Some of us far along in a journey, others at the brink of something new. Wherever we are today, let us be curious. May we release the judgments that we carry and open a space for wonder and possibility. May we look for your wisdom and your care in our everyday life, in the supportive teammate on the field after an arduous practice, in the resonance of the alto section, in the late-night conversation with a roommate after the long week, in the still quiet of the library. You are in all of those places, unfolding and revealing your grace in those things which we fail to notice or even find frustrating and difficult. Help us to relish in joy this year, delighting in small miracles that appear in the flutter of a monarch and the laughter of a friend. We will sometimes be overwhelmed and tired, anxious and uncertain, but you will be there all the same, alongside us in this year, whatever it brings. We thank you for the call to live and work with each other in our community at Hanover, and ask that you would be receptive, we would be receptive to what your Spirit is doing among us. In your holy name we pray. Amen. You may be seated.
Hello. Hello. Oh, very nice. I heard it over here, wherever you were. Thank you. Welcome, faculty, staff, students, to the 2022 Hanover College Fall Convocation. And a special welcome to the classes of 2023 and 2026, our soon-to-be graduating seniors, and our brand new first-year students. It's my great pleasure and honor to officially launch this academic year by welcoming you to this long-standing tradition at Hanover College. Now, I've mentioned in previous years that convocation means a group of people called together for a purpose. Literally, a convocation is not an event or a place. It's us responding to a call to come together for a reason. Now, in part, that reason is to acknowledge our seniors, to welcome everyone to the new academic year, to give faculty a chance to air out our fancy robes. More importantly, the reason that we gather today is to remind ourselves of the bigger reasons why we have responded to a call to be a part of Hanover College and to devote ourselves to the work that we have here. Now, certainly each of us have our own personal reasons for being here. Maybe attending Hanover College is a family tradition in your family. Maybe you've decided that we had the best program for the major that you wanted to study. Maybe you chose Hanover because you wanted to have an opportunity to continue with competitive athletics, to work for social justice, or just to be really involved on a small campus. Whatever your individual reasons and goals, the college has a reason for being here too. And in coming to Hanover College, I hope that you see, and for our seniors, that you have seen the college's purpose as your purpose. Now, that purpose is summed up in our mission statement, which hopefully you all have seen if you can't recite from memory. Hanover College is a challenging and supportive community whose members take responsibility for lifelong inquiry, transformational learning, and meaningful service. Now, whether you're a first-year student or a senior, a sophomore, a junior, or graduate student, I want to challenge you just for a moment with a few questions to consider on how you are living out this mission. First, are you learning what your professors tell you that you have to learn and doing what's necessary to earn the grade you want? Or are you developing the habits, the discipline, the patience, the curiosity that will keep you learning when there aren't any professors and when there are no grades? We're here to help you become learners forever, for the rest of your lives. Second, are you willing to be transformed by what you learn? To be transformed is to be dramatically changed. Now, I imagine some of our seniors might look back to your first-year selves and say, wow, I am such a different person now than I was then. Now, part of that is just natural maturation, but what you learn in the classroom, in your relationships at work should change you. And for some, these changes might look like a 180-degree turn. And for others, it may look more like growing into the person that you are already and continually becoming. For example, transformation might mean a complete change of your political beliefs, or it might mean that you become someone who is better able to understand and to act on the beliefs that you came here with. But if you leave here the same person as when you came as a first-year student, we haven't done our jobs. Finally, are you finding, to paraphrase the late Frederick Buechner, where your great joy meets the world's great need? All this education, all these hours spent in residence halls and Greek houses and on athletic teams and with friends who used to be strangers, this is all for the purpose of discovering what you're good at, what you love, growing into those things, and spending the rest of your lives figuring out why any of it matters. Who needs you? Who needs the person you have become through your time at Hanover? Now, it's never too late or too soon to ponder these questions. Whether you're a first-year student looking at these seniors thinking, wow, that'll be me someday, or you're a senior sitting here thinking, wow, this is me, I hope that you will be intentional about pursuing these goals. Be intentional about why you're here, what you hope graduation will mean for you. And always remember, we are pursuing these goals together as a community. No one can do these things for you, but you also cannot do them alone. I believe this is going to be a great year at Hanover College. Thank you for letting us be a part of your lives and of your journeys toward the amazing persons that you are and that you will be. And now it is my pleasure to introduce your Student Senate President, Nicole Shariat Madari, class of 24.
My warmest welcome to all. My name is Nicole Shariat Madari. My pronouns are she, her, hers, and I am your Student Senate President this year. Firstly, I would like to thank you for being here. Second, I want to extend my gratitude for having the opportunity to act as your Senate President. Here we are, starting another academic year. For some, it's the beginning of their undergraduate career. For others, it's the beginning of the end of their college experience. And a less dramatic option, it just might be a Thursday afternoon. But whatever the reason that brought you here today to this convocation, congratulations. Now, I will be starting my speech going against the advice of every English teacher I've ever had and start with a quote. The quote is dear to my heart and from one of my favorite poets, Hafiz. He was one of the most influential Persian writers whose collected works are regarded by many Iranians as the pinnacle of Persian literature and whose work serves as highly respected advice for all. First, I will read the poem in its original form in Farsi. Tarz arzan tarin otekhe inkani ast. Man dost daram babinam zindogeye to betar azin beshe. Now, to the majority of the audience that is not versed in the beautiful language that is Farsi, I will translate for you. Fear is the cheapest room in the house. I would like to see you living in better conditions. Fear is a universal experience. As we navigate this exceedingly complex world, fear is a reoccurring character, so to speak. To deal with this never-ending, annoying feeling, we must challenge it every day, as fear is the thief of possibility. As our academic schedules fill up, many of us are going to be faced with important challenges that lead us to question our own abilities. Questions like, am I good enough? Isn't there someone else better for the job? What if I fail? What if I disappoint? The greatest strength comes from those who overcome. And the thought, I don't want to be disappointed, leads to a dead end. Trying and failing, or hopefully succeeding, is a part of truly living. Don't underestimate your strength and power because of a fearful voice in the back of your head. Now, I'm not saying you shouldn't be scared when faced with real strenuous situations, or by no means am I telling you to be reckless with your decision-making and throw fear out completely. Rather, I challenge you to not let fear be the thief of your great possibility. Now, the great poet Hafez did not necessarily speak of people with anxiety disorder, but I recognize this is a reality for many. And I hope Hafez's advice can serve as a reminder for your great strength. As we encounter the world of academia, the job market, being bombarded with work is bound to happen. With that work, whether that be exams, service projects, homework, job responsibilities, or sports, don't travel down the rugged road of tying your self-worth to your levels of productivity. Society nowadays, we get stuck doing this, constantly working, pushing ourselves harder to finally feel satisfied. Time will pass, and soon after, those feelings turn. I thought the more tirelessly I work, the happier I should become. I unfortunately learned that this was not the case, because as life, as we know it, is not one concise answer. That cycle of work might incite challenge and innovation, but ultimately, I found it does not last. I was left with a feeling of emptiness, unworthy, and frankly overworked. Looking at Eastern philosophy might be some assistance to this problematic mindset we have unintentionally adopted, specifically a Buddhist teaching explored by Josai Tada. He aided in pointing out the issues of getting caught up in chasing the wrong patterns to make yourself happy. Specifically, this teaching encourages having your main source of happiness coming from things that don't depend on circumstance. For instance, whether you're successful, popular, rich, or how productive you are. The type of happiness that helps you avoid tying your self-worth to your work is referred to as absolute happiness. That is a sustained joy you find within yourself. Absolute happiness is more fluid and stable through the flow of life. As we are in this transition period, quote unquote, to real adulthood, your productivity and your amount of success should not change the fact that you deserve to be happy, to be living happy. Don't let your worth come from your productivity, as we all are inherently worthy and deserving. As young adults, we are exploring our identity, and we are fed this idea of finding ourselves during this new era. Personally, I have some objections with this concept. I have learned to an extent there is no finding yourself, because that implies as young people we are inherently lost. While yes, I do feel lost at times, and recently more so, we aren't lost objects waiting for its owner to return. We are complex human beings trying our best. Your true self is already there, buried under others' opinions, years of societal conditioning, problematic conclusions we made about ourselves while growing up. The finding yourselves we were told to do didn't work for me. I had to return to myself. And by returning to myself, I did evolve, and with that evolving, I used Hafez's advice and found better conditions for myself, and I'm still trying. As I leave you, I ask two final questions. How will you create better conditions for yourself? And will you let fear be the thief of your great possibility? Thank you.
Hey guys, I have a poem to share, as the school asked me to write a poem and then perform it, and I said yes. This has no title, but on my notes page on my phone it says Hanover poem, so that's the going title right now. Seasons change and merge. Bright green leaves cover the sky above our heads, then red and orange leaves crunch beneath our feet. Those leaves disappear, making way for ice and snow for our feet to crunch instead. And then, when the bitter cold may have done us in, it melts, and cicadas invade the land with their chirping, while the trees begin to bloom and the air smells fresh. Hanover is my home, with KP and the questionable smells, to Crow with its door locks, to Kappa Alpha Theta, which is far too nice for a crazy house like ours to live in. This place has shaped us, changed us, and molded us into the people we are today. We've gone through our own uniquely Hanover seasons, syllabus eve and bingo to Fiji's pirate-like music invasion, to the free cookies and hot cocoa in the CC with the bikini run at the first snowfall, then to wiffle ball, travel, and some dude who will inevitably eat a live cicada. We've celebrated here together, yelled together, partied together, studied together, ate together, mourned together. This has been our home for the past 4 years, and along with our campus, we have changed. We became better people, became better students, better friends, and while some will say they have only become worse, I see a bright and wonderful change that has happened in us all, uniting us as a class and solidifying this ground as ours. We've been through some really tough times. We've lost friends, family, and sometimes even our mental stability, but by God, we're here. We've done it. Through all the yik-yak drama, through the pandemic, through the change of food in the UGG, we've charged through those rough and ragged winters to create this, our senior year. This year is in our own hands. Our joy, our sadness, our everything is in our own hands. We control our own personal seasons, and somehow I think this is going to be the best senior class Hanover has seen in a long time. To us, class of 2023, let's make this year, these seasons, one to impact ourselves and Hanover for the rest of history. Thanks.
Thank you, Mary. With others on the stage today, I too want to extend my warm welcome to this event and to the start of our academic year. As a community, and especially for the seniors who are gathered today, we've been through a lot together during these last 2.5 years, and it's exciting to begin a year looking at so many faces. And I know that we're all looking forward to a year ahead in hopes of both good health and a joyful life together in community. But now I'd like for you to look a little further ahead, just a few weeks from now, in fact, when an annual holiday ritual will begin. I'm not talking about family gatherings, turkey dinners, menorah candles, or decorated trees. No, I am talking about the endless list of new and old holiday movies on the Hallmark Channel. They have become an enduring feature of our holiday season in America and a guilty pleasure for many. I won't ask for a show of hands. I should add that they are big business. Last December, Forbes magazine estimated that the Hallmark Channel's revenue from just the holiday movies was $350 million. The plots are relatively simple, but always romantic and sentimental. Here are just a couple of examples of the new Hallmark movies that were offered in 2021. For example, one December night, two music managers must put their history aside to oversee the televised reunion performance of their rock star fathers with a fractured past. In The 9 Kittens of Christmas, cat lovers Zachary and Marilee are thrown back together at Christmas when they're tasked with finding homes for a litter of adorable kittens. Now, usually one, but sometimes both, of the leads have some issue or past that causes them to put up barriers or ignore or perhaps deny the opportunity of love that is right in front of them. Other characters in the movie see something that the lead characters cannot. But in the end, love conquers all. Every Hallmark movie has a happy ending. And the audience watching the film, and even the other characters, cannot help but ask over and over, why can't that person have a heart open to love? Well, I grant you that these movies will never be considered fine cinema, and I doubt that they will be discussed and appraised for their artistic value in Hanover classes. Fair enough. So let's keep it simple. Today, my question for all of you gathered here today is this: is your heart open to love? Is it? Okay, before you think this convocation is going to be turned into a matchmaking session or that Lambert has finally lost all of his marbles, let me clarify. I don't want to talk about romantic love today. No, I'll leave that to others. No, I want to talk about the love of learning. I want to talk about the love of the world and all that is in it, a fascination and a sense of reverence, awe, and wonder. This is the love of which I speak. And just like a good Hallmark movie, in the brief time we have together, I want to chip away at the barriers you may have created, or perhaps that others have created for you, in the great hope that at Hanover you might fall deeply and, dare I say, passionately in love with learning. In his book, To Know as We Are Known, the sociologist and public intellectual Parker Palmer describes two very common alternatives to a love of learning. These are alternatives that seem normal to and even attractive, but he argues they are corrosive. And in good Hallmark movie fashion, let me refer to them as baggage, or a hardness of heart that individuals bring to learning and that prevent true love. The first of these bags is to understand knowledge as power and learning as a means of control. And I suspect that this is very familiar to all of us. When I was a kid, I used to watch Schoolhouse Rock cartoons that proclaimed knowledge is power. And if you've ever used the word or metaphor of mastery to describe learning, you have captured this alternative. We often say that we have mastered the material or mastered the concept, but think carefully about what we say in these words. To master is to own, to control, to manipulate, and to use. We seek to possess knowledge, to have power, perhaps deluding ourselves into believing that we will use our powers for good. Palmer argues that most knowing is like this, and it is accompanied by pedagogies that disassemble and manipulate so that we might gain power over what we seek to understand. But, says Palmer, knowledge-seeking mastery turns all of its subjects into nature, and including nature and human beings, into objective things. This is what is necessary to control, and control makes us feel better. What Palmer wrote almost 40 years ago still rings true to my ears. We see a world full of economic, political, environmental, and social dangers. But through mastery, through gaining power through knowledge, many see the opportunity to create private sanity and safety. We can, even as the world goes to hell in a handbasket, keep ourselves safe and our families safe. We will master knowledge that allows us to protect ourselves from climate change with dikes and new construction techniques. We will master knowledge so that we can isolate ourselves in enclaves that are safe from poverty-driven crime. We will master knowledge so that we will have professions that prosper amidst economic downturn. We will be winners as the entire world seems to lose. Now, the other path, the other bag that Palmer describes hits even closer to home for those of us in a liberal arts-centered institution. He says that curiosity as a source of knowledge can also prove dangerous. A curious knowing can entail a disinterestedness that leads us to see the world as a plaything. It is saying, I really enjoyed that class, but it had nothing to do with me. I have said many times as a student and as a professor that learning is fun, and that it should be fun. But playing store or restaurant can be fun for a kid whose belly is full, but it's cruel for a child who is hungry. Likewise, I've watched the cruelty of a cat bat around a live chipmunk, playing with its food. Palmer seems just as concerned about learning in a way that allows us to stand above it all, to be amused by our knowing, perhaps even smug, because the knowledge is abundant but uncaring. This is an education that truly deserves the label elitist. It is an education for clever banter at parties and turns knowledge into trivia. The word that Palmer chooses to lump these approaches together with is objectivism, and this is not to be confused with Ayn Rand's philosophy of the same word. Rather, Palmer wants us to consider how our knowing can make everything and everyone into an object. Knowledge-seeking mastery, or even play, turns all of its subjects, including nature and human beings, into objective things. But even worse, he says, objectivism assumes a sharp distinction between the knower and what is known. Objectivism requires a teacher who stands as a mediator between the knower and the known. Objectivism uses a hierarchical classroom. The teacher is the knowledge authority, the person who teaches mastery, control, and disinterestedness. In romantic relationships, we can easily define who an abuser is. We can define who a player is. So now I ask you to consider how those can be understood as metaphors for types of learners, for ways of learning. The latter might be fun but cruel. The former is manipulative and controlling. We can easily pursue the idea further, but what we can easily conclude is that neither speaks of love and compassion. So I ask you again, is your heart open to love? And I'll push it a bit further. Is your mind open to love too? Palmer challenges us to see knowing as a form of loving. This seems strange to our ears, but it need not be. As he notes, the Hebrew and Scriptures made this connection centuries ago. In the Hebrew Bible, the word for knowing, used to describe both sexual relationships and the knowledge of God and created world, are the same. To know, to truly know and to know deeply, is to speak of love and intimacy. We stand in reverence at the beauty and mystery of a single cell, a solitary human being, a geological formation, a forgotten custom, an entire society. To study anything is to immerse ourselves into the sacred, to understand and care for it in reverence. Knowing as love requires a personal relationship between the knower and the known. Knowing, learning in this way cannot be mediated, but it can be done in community. To know is to be in community with what we seek to know, and simultaneously in community with our fellow knowers, as well as our history and our environment. If we do not regard the subject we seek to know as an object or an abstraction, if we recognize this subject as something to fully understand rather than control, as something to love rather than to master, we see knowing as a joy. Moreover, it is a joy and an excitement to be shared. It is the excitement of meeting someone new and being so excited to introduce that person to others so that we all may get to know each other better. And so learning in this way is not just about knowing what we study. It's about learning about ourselves and our fellow learners. It's about being a learning community. Now, the realist in me wants to tell you that this is very, very hard. I have learned many things because I want to master them. I wanted to treat the ideas, concepts, and knowledge as tools that I might use to my own advantage or to sound erudite in front of students and colleagues. As an example, when I was an undergraduate student of economics, I was required to study calculus. Calculus to me was a tool for solving economic problems, not unlike the wrench a plumber might use to fix a leaky pipe. But as I spent more time with mathematicians and with students who love math, I began to see how they didn't see calculus like a wrench. Rather, they saw a calculus proof like I might see a beautiful work of art. I remember the first time I heard the word beautiful attached to calculus, and my mind was blown. I was disoriented because it was such a radically different way of knowing mathematics. These lovers of learning, professors and students alike, loved mathematics, and they cared enough about other people that they wanted us to love it too. I remember walking in the quad just last year and passing the geology club table at the student involvement fair. I was called by a former advisee who asked if I wanted a rock from a box on her table. And in our exchange, I witnessed the excitement of a student when she was explaining the different types of rocks that were available. Not only was she excited about the types of rocks, but she wanted me to introduce me to them and help me understand how they are part of my everyday life, where I would find them, and how they were formed. She wanted me to know them and for me to love them as she did. She wanted me to join her community of learning. Like the characters in a Hallmark holiday movie, and perhaps like you, I've approached many of these experiences with a hardness of heart. I was too busy, too distracted, too tired, or too worried to open my heart to love and what I might learn from it. And as I look back on my life, I cannot help but wonder about lost loves. What else might I have come to love if I had just opened my heart to learning when I had the chance? Well, in our learning, whether it is in our first year or our last, or at any point in our lives, we always have the choice of a heart and mind that are open to loving what we care and study. In loving, we open our lives to curiosity, to joy, to happiness. But we can also learn with a hardened heart, and then must endure learning as a chore, because to seek mastery and control is to treat knowledge as only a means to an end. When we love, we have no end in sight. Our lives are open to new experiences, new discoveries, and new friends in learning. We are also open to reverence and a sense of awe for the almost holy encounter we might have with people, places, ideas, and things. Well, in my time at Hanover, I've occasionally pointed to the 1833 inaugural address of James Blythe, the college's first president, who spoke of the connectivity of mind and heart. He stated, "We hold it to be a sound principle that the college which does not make the cultivation of the heart a primary object had better never have been founded. Such a college will prove a curse to the world." It is possible to see head and heart develop simultaneously, but on separate and isolated paths. We might say that love is for our personal relationships or our spiritual lives, but our heads and minds are for learning. We might enforce, as others must, a wall of separation between mind and heart, and a learning where reverence cannot be invoked because to do so would be to cross a forbidden territory. So as we begin this new academic year, I offer this simple prayer for us all. May we be a community of learning where love abounds and where boundaries are torn down. May we cultivate love in hearts and minds. Where learning to control is present, may we love our friends and colleagues into a learning community again. And if, at some dark day in the future, our successors abandon the cultivation of the heart with the cultivation of the mind, if our successors give up on being a community of joyful learners, and if our successors no longer stand in awe and reverence of this world and its creatures, May our institutional end come too. What remains will not be what Hanover was called to be. And may we all pray today and every day that we will live and learn with hearts, minds, and lives worthy of our calling. Thank you.
Please rise and join me in the singing of the Alma Mater. High above our stately river, far from mountain town, stands our noble alma mater, looking proudly down. We, her children, sing her praises, live our loyalty. Hail to thee, alma mater, Hanover, hail to thee. Strong, serene in faith and honor, stands our college here, offering wisdom, truth, and beauty, year by passing year. We, her children, sing her praises, live our loyalty. Hail to thee, alma mater, Hanover, hail to thee.
Please remain standing as we are blessed on our way out. I'm using the words of the late Frederick Buechner, and he wrote, "The grace of God means something like this. Here is your life. You might never have been, but you're here because the party would not have been complete without you. Here is the world. Beautiful and terrible things will happen. But do not be afraid, because I am with you. Nothing can separate us, and it is for you that I created the universe."